Maxime Bernier. Now, if you don't know who Maxime Bernier is, he ran for conservative leadership in Canada and ultimately lost to Andrew Scheer by, I mean, a very small percentage point. Now, he was viewed as the more libertarian sort of candidate. And I thought for a long time he would have actually been the more rational choice for the Conservatives to choose as their leader. But he went on some crazy anti-Canadian rant. And I'm going to show you why it's anti-Canadian. But first, let me show you what these tweets were. So let's start off with this first one here. So Maxime Bernier, this was a thread of, I think, 6 different tweets. He starts out saying, Trudeau keeps pushing his "diversity is our strength" slogan. Yes, Canada is a huge and diverse country. This diversity is part of us and should be celebrated. But where do we draw the line? Diversity is what makes Canada strong. Trudeau. That's Trudeau's video. So this is the problem. This is the problem. Where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line? At the law. So if your culture breaks the law, that's where the line is drawn. What Bernier is doing here from the start is trying to create this us versus them mentality. That people who are already here, who in his mind are white people should be fearing other cultures coming into our society and changing our cultural norms. Well, I mean, where do we draw the line? Again, we draw the line at the law. Let me give you an example. Mother convicted of killing daughters in honor killing, ordered deported after life sentence served. That's where we draw the line. Honor killings, breaking the law. So this is just the first tweet. Let me get to the next one. So this is tweet number 2. Ethnic, religious, linguistic, sexual, and other minorities were unjustly repressed in the past. We've done a lot to redress those injustices and give everyone equal rights. Canada is today one of the countries where people have the most freedom to express their identity. And let me go to the third one. But why should we promote ever more diversity? If anything and everything is Canadian, does being Canadian mean something? Shouldn't we emphasize our cultural traditions, what we have built and have in common, and what makes us different from other cultures and societies? Maxime Bernier. So, what is he talking about here? Whose cultural traditions? White people. That's what he's talking about. He wants to emphasize the existing cultural traditions of white people. Because, why? So, I'm going to show you why this is anti-Canadian. So, I mean, if he was talking about Indigenous people, he would actually have more of a point, because we took their land. But establishing the existing traditions of Canada, which he obviously means white people, all he's saying there is, why are we allowing other cultures to then come into our country and take over what was once Canada in our minds as white people? It's just, it's obviously bigoted. It's obviously racist. Now, let me go to the next tweet before I break down this via Canadian law. So here's tweet number 4. Here we go. Having people live among us who reject basic Western values such as freedom, equality, tolerance, and openness doesn't make us strong. People who refuse to integrate into our society and want to live apart in their ghetto don't make our society strong. Now the dog whistles are getting stronger. The ghetto. Oh, I'm sure he's talking about the ghetto of Peterborough, Ontario. That is 94% white people. And let me show you here, if the screenshots are here. Highest unemployment rate in Canada. And also, Peterborough's food insecurity rate among highest on provincial and national levels, study finds. I'm sure he's talking about that ghetto. That ghetto of all white people. No. You know what he's talking about. So, this is just disgusting. And when he says here, quote, rejecting freedom, equality, tolerance, and openness, is he talking about the right wing, conservatives, like Rebel Media, who, here we go. Ex-Rebel Media host promotes 1930s book by fascist author advocating the elimination of Jews. Is that who Maxime Bernier is talking about? Or maybe he's talking about Ontario PC candidate Andrew Lawton. Gender and racial discrimination should be legal. Or maybe he's talking about Rebel Media host Holocaust video praised by Nazis and former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard. No, we know he's not talking about those things because those are his voters. Now, there's more tweets. we ain't done. Let's go to tweet number 5. Trudeau's extreme this is great. Trudeau's extreme multiculturalism and cult of diversity will divide us into little tribes that have less and less in common apart from their dependence on government in Ottawa. These tribes become political clienteles to be bought with taxpayer money and special privileges. Okay. Really? The multiculturalism quote here, extreme multiculturalism, cult of diversity. What are you saying? Notice how there's no mention of any specific policy in this anywhere. Maxime Bernier is not being critical of any Trudeau policy. If he was, he would be saying that. But he's not saying that. He's speaking in very vague generalities because he's dog whistling to a racist conservative base. That's what this is. And to be honest, I'm not even sure if he realizes what he's doing, but that's exactly what he's doing. Now, if you want to see why this is anti-Canadian, all you have to do is look at the multiculturalism policy in Canada, which is in our Constitution. Multiculturalism is literally in our Constitution. So let me show you that. So this is just A and B of a much longer list, but let me read this here. So it is hereby declared to be the policy of the Government of Canada to recognize and promote the understanding that multiculturalism reflects the cultural and racial diversity of Canadian society and acknowledges the freedom of all members of Canadian society to preserve, enhance, and share their cultural heritage. B. Recognize and promote the understanding that multiculturalism is a fundamental characteristic of the Canadian heritage and identity, and that it provides an invaluable resource in the shaping of Canada's future. So, those are just A and B. The list is a lot longer. But the point here is that multiculturalism is Canadian. If you're against multiculturalism, as Maxime Bernier is here, you are being anti-Canadian. Now, let me show you the his last tweet of all the tweets. This one here. Cultural balkanization brings distrust, social conflict, and potentially violence, as we are seeing everywhere. It's time we reverse this trend before the situation gets worse. More diversity will not be our strength. It will destroy what has made us such a great country. Just complete and utter bullshit. Multiculturalism is what made Canada what we are now. So for you to be anti-multicultural, as I said, is to be anti-Canadian. To try and preserve the way that you view Canada as a white person does not make you more Canadian than anyone else. We are all here and able to share our heritage, to share who we are, how we perceive to be Canadian, what we perceive as a Canadian culture. We can all share that. So to try and divide us based on our diversity is anti-Canadian and honestly disgusting. And he is just being a chicken shit here because he's not mentioning any policy. There's no policy at all. If he was against a specific policy, he would mention that. And that could be an actual focus of what he's talking about, but it's not. This is all just playing to the base.